Welcome back here in Bookwrights House. My name is Maria, and here we dive deep into stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the strength we carry within. Today's guest is a remarkable woman whose journey through heartbreak has become a beacon of hope for so many. K.E. Thompson is the author of the powerful and deeply moving book, Finding Joy in the Midst of Grief, continuing in God's loving grip through loss of a loved one. In her book, Kay invites us into her personal journey, navigating the sorrow of losing her husband of 44 years and learning to embrace that enduring comfort and strength found in God's unfailing grace. It is my absolute honor to welcome to our podcast, to our show, author, encourager, and living testimony of grace, K.E. Thompson. Hi, Kay. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it is a great pleasure of having you. Your story is just phenomenal, and you are inspiring a lot of people. But I want to take you back in August 10, 2008, the day your husband Dale passed away. Can you take us back to that moment and share what that day was like for you?
Yeah, I can try. Sometimes I don't like to go all the way back there, but it does help us learn
Mm-hmm.
how to move forward. So the day was Sunday,
Okay.
August the 10th, and we were Sunday school teachers at that point for 4-year-olds. We'd done the 21 years of high school and junior high, and so now we were back with the little ones. And we didn't have a sub for that Sunday. And so I went, and my neighbor came and sat with Dale in case he needed something. Um, and I was going to do an errand on the way home. And I decided I better not, I better just go home. And so that afternoon, they had my daughter and her family were coming for lunch. They had been gone to Michigan for a few days, and all of a sudden, one day, Dale decided Mindy and her kids needed to come home. And I said to him, if I call, you need to talk because if I talk, it will be like I'm a panicky mother. And so he said, "Mm." So I called and I put the phone down by his ear, and he could hardly speak at this point, and he just simply said, "Mindy, you need to come home." And then he dropped. I took the phone away from his ear because he put his head down. So um, they came home 2 days later, and they actually were there the afternoon that we called the ambulance, that Sunday afternoon on the 10th of August. He just got up from the table. He did get up and go eat lunch at the dinner table, but he
Okay.
didn't hardly eat anything. And then he began to say, "I need to lay down. I need to lay down." And I said, "Oh dear." And so I tried to talk him into staying, not realizing we were right at the end door. So he finally got up, and I watched him as he walked down the hall, holding onto the wall so he didn't fall down.
Mm-hmm.
And I got him into bed, and all of a sudden he began to gasp for air.
Oh.
And I hate that sound, but that was the sound I heard. Um, and so I called the 911, and we didn't live far from the fire station, so they were there within 2 or 3 minutes. And they ended up taking him out on a gurney. He was still conscious, but I felt like I was saying goodbye to him then because I didn't see him alive again. They took him in the ambulance to the hospital, and I asked if I could ride with them because on my soap operas, they always ride
Mm-hmm.
with them. But they said, no, we don't do that. So I thought they probably knew he wasn't going to make it, and they didn't want me in the way at the time. So when we got to the hospital, my daughter Mindy and I were waiting in the waiting room, and I finally said to the nurses, I said, we've been waiting almost an hour, and it is not fun, and I need to know where my husband is and how he is, and I want to go see him. First thing you know, the doctor came to the door, called my name, and I thought, oh
Oh.
my. You could tell by the grim look on his face.
Yes.
He told me that Dale had not made it. They tried hard for 25 minutes or so to keep him alive, but he just was not able to hang on. So they, excuse me, they ended up letting me go see him, although that was against what the doctor thought was wise. He said, "You don't want to see him now. He's still hooked up to everything." And I said, "I'm not leaving until I see him. Come back tomorrow and he'll be in better shape for you to see." I said, "No, I am not leaving until I say goodbye to him." So I went in. First, Mindy said, "I'll wait out here," like the nervous daughter. And so I went in, and um, they hadn't even closed his eyes yet, which was kind of
Oh.
haunting. But
Mm-hmm.
they ended up letting me see him, and he had a sheet over him up to his neck. And so I reached under to hold his right hand. Now, his right hand was his, what I called the Parkinson's hand. It
Mm-hmm.
was so stiff and rigid. His fingers didn't bend or anything. And so I reached under his hand, under the sheet, and grabbed his hand, and it was like a normal hand. And I thought, oh, I'm on the wrong side. And I ran around to the other side of the cart, and it was a normal hand. So I went back and grabbed the right one again. And I thought, God is telling me that he is whole and he is fine and he is not sick any longer. And
Right.
after these 18 years, that still takes me back to the tears.
I can see that. I'm sorry to have asked that question because
No, no, no,
I just want to
no,
know how
that's
it
fine.
was in that exact moment, that grief, that kind of
Yeah,
feeling that we all hate to happen. But on that very moment, right where we are right now as we speak, that's grief right there. How
right.
did you accept that?
Oh, I think God puts us in a fog and we just kind of go on adrenaline doing what we need to do because we have
Mm-hmm.
to do it. Somebody has to do it.
Right.
And my daughter that lived back in Chicago, she wasn't there at the time. And so she was flying in. People were coming in from Canada that were really good friends of ours. And the man that was going to do the funeral service, we had already arranged that because we knew there was not going to be a happy ending on this side of heaven. And so um, I just kind of did what I had to do. And when
Mm-hmm.
it was all over and when everything was done, then that begins to kind of crawl back through your body and you say, what do I do now? And that's the harder part than accepting the grief. It's like, what do I do now? I'm by myself. I don't know what to do. But I think I explain in my book that God just put his arms around me and he
Mm-hmm.
said to me, you can do this because I am here. And I thought, oh, but I don't see you. But I learned through this that we don't have to see the Lord in order to believe. It's our faith that gives
Mm-hmm.
us what we need. And he never makes a mistake. And I've taught a grief recovery class for the last, let me think, 12 years. And I do two a year. Sorry. And I do two a year. And we ended up this year in September will be my 30th round of grief share classes.
That's
And
an
it
amazing
entails,
journey. Okay, that's an amazing journey. Many people wonder, is there a timeline for healing from grief? In your own journey, what have you learned about the process of grief and how long does it really take? Have you gotten over it or are you still there?
well, you saw my tears. That's not
I
grief,
know.
it's just remembering grief, I think. And as hard as that was, that has not gone away. He will be gone 18 years this August. And I think you just have to determine to put one foot in front of the other. Don't second guess what's happening next. Don't try to think where's the money going to come from. I mean, be prudent, obviously,
Hmm.
but um, not to the extent that you lose sleep over it. I used to say, God, help me sleep tonight. And sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But when I couldn't sleep, God was always teaching me something. And I think we take what God does for us all the time, we can take it for granted and we don't see it. We
Mhm.
just, it happens. It's a, a coincidence. And I don't think there's coincidences after this round of journey back to joy. And he's still missed when you go to graduations and weddings and uh, all kinds of
Special
things.
occasions. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Well, it shows that your faith is a central part of your story. How has your relationship with God helped you endure and navigate the journey of grief?
I think he just showed me, you pray about it and you think, God, are you hearing me? But then all of a sudden, the things happen that you prayed about. And I've been a Christian since I was 21. And I grew up in a household. My dad was a pastor in the Methodist
Hmm.
church. And so I've been around Christian thinking and Christian beliefs all my life, but I didn't make the real decision for my life until I was 21.
When you got
And so
married.
I got married when I was 19.
Oh, okay. So when you were 19,
19.
whose decision
Yes,
was
yes.
it?
My first husband was, I have remarried, but Dale was in service in the Air Force and he was sent, we got engaged beginning part of February in
Uh-huh.
62. I
Mm-hmm.
was still in high school. And he was sent to Turkey by the end of February. And he
Oh,
had a year and a half stint over there at the Air Force Base. And when he came home, we got married in November 7th, 1964. And I had been out of school for a year.
all right.
So, and working on my own, living with my parents, but doing my own job. And then we got married, and before long, we were moved to California because that's where he was from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd had a lot of adjustments from 19 on.
All right. So what I see right now is a gift. You are very gifted. You have been having this gift of fortitude, but
Yeah.
never easy in your experience. Was acceptance of your loss something that came easily? I know it's never easy, but what helped you move toward it?
Um, Yeah, I would just watch a lot of, I like to watch John Hagee on his TV broadcast and a
Mm-hmm.
couple of others, Max Lucado, and listening to them, it helped some. And then the night would come and I'd be all alone and I'd think, yeah. And somehow in the, God would pick me up. And, I didn't even realize it. And I knew that someday I would be able to turn the corner. So whether that's in 1 year, 5 years, 3 years, for me, it was 3 years. I woke up one morning and I thought, oh, I have a reason to get out of bed. And I think that's the hardest thing is when we lose somebody that we love, whether it's a child or whether it's a parent or a sibling or your spouse. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I had a purpose. I was doing things together with somebody. Somebody loved me and I loved them. And then all of a sudden I have nobody. My parents were gone. My kids didn't live around and my parents were both gone. So it was kind of um, do it or don't. And I thought, I'm not doing anybody any good by wanting to stay in bed every day. And normally I did not, but the harder it got, it took me longer to get out of bed. And so I think it was just God's leading and pushing
Mm-hmm.
uh, to get me up and moving. And I woke up one morning in the third year, and I don't even know when in the third year, but I know it was the third year. Um, it was a different feeling. The weight was lifted. And maybe by then in my subconscious, I had accepted the fact that he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Clothes were given away. Um, House stuff was taken care of and yard things were taken care of. And it was just kind of like, here I am. And I think that the hard part was, I think I mentioned this in my book too, that the hard part was having the checkbook come, the new checks
Ah,
with
mm-hmm.
only one name on it.
Wow.
And because we had a joint account and now I have one. But when it came, it was it made me cry. I just sat down and cried because it was so sad. But that was like somewhere in the second year. And
That was the
it,
reality coming
pardon?
in. That was the reality coming in.
Yes,
Instead
yes.
of two
And I,
names, just one.
yeah. And that's hard when you see reality because I could kind of cover and just kind of do what had to be done. And most of the time, I didn't have in the first year, I didn't have a brain that could put two things together. I had paperwork to do. I had a job I was still doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they were very kind and let me work from home. And so that was good. I went back to work partway into the end of the first year and worked in the office. But um, I think that gave me a chance to just be me at home, and I didn't have to put on a happy face for work
Mm-hmm.
um, because I could do it over the internet and it was fine. But there were times where night is really hard, rainy weather is really hard,
Oh.
and the whole thing begins to close in. Now I like the rain and I like the
Oh.
the stormy nights, and because I know my husband is in a safe place, and I know that God is taking care of him along with my parents and others that I know love the Lord and have headed to heaven ahead of me. Um, when I left him in the hospital in the
Mhm.
trauma room, now this will make me cry. I said to him as I leaned down and kissed him on the head, I said, "Wait for me on the other side, and I will be there." And then I could walk away and know that I had kind of closed that door. And
Mhm.
each thing was kind of, how do I close the door for this? How do I close the door for that? I have some material I put together for my grief classes that says there's all these doors to open, and you open them a little bit, but you don't go in. And then after so long, you might open the door and turn the light on so you can see in the room. And that's what I kind of did with his life. I mean, I had to go in the room. That was the bedroom we had. But it was not easy.
Mhm.
And, in that third year, it suddenly became much easier to deal with. Not that you forget them, but you've learned how to cope with it.
Right. So which year did you do your first book, this Finding Joy in the Midst of Grief? Which year
Yeah,
was this released? And which year did
in
you start to write?
2010, 2010, and that's old now. It's been out a long time. But
So that would be just 2 years after the death
2 years
of
after,
Dale.
yes, yes, correct.
Wow.
And when he was ill, we had a group of friends from church that we did a lot of things with, and and he played trumpet, so all the guys in his brass group were concerned, and they would come and visit and stuff, and they'd say, well, send us, how he is today. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of started a blog that I sent out, not every night, but pretty close to every night,
Mm-hmm.
because it was my lifeline to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And and after he was gone and the funeral was over and a year or two passed, people kept saying, "Well, what are you doing now? What happened today?" And so I would write to him, and then a couple of them said, "You should put this in a book." I thought, who in the world would read my book? But I have gotten so many compliments about how it's helped them. People in my grief class usually buy them, um, and they just have really good reviews on Amazon. And I've had personal reviews come in, and it really helps them with the struggles that they're having
Mm-hmm.
in their own life,
I'm
having lost somebody.
I'm glad that you said that because I was going to ask if you're aware of the impact your book has had on readers, because many have found hope in your words. How does it feel knowing your story has helped others find strength to face another day?
It makes me feel really good, and I thank the Lord for the help in getting the story out, having me get enough confidence to be able to write it and put it together. I wrote the book, the first 8 chapters I wrote in a week. I went down to Carmel, California, and I rented a house on the beach, and that's my favorite place to be. And
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the first 8 chapters. I was all by myself, and I just put my books out on, they had one of these great big London type castle uh, tables in their big room. And I sat there with my computer and my books and my notes. Um, and so, I would write some each day. And by the time the end of the week came, I thought, well, that's about all I can add. That's all I can say. The extra chapter that I wrote was when God brought someone new into my life. And that was 10 years later. So I lived alone for 10 years. And some days were really hard, other days were okay. And when my kids were around, they were happy days.
Wow.
And if that can help someone else, if they can pull out anything that in my book to help themselves, that's all it's worth. I don't expect to ever make millions on my book because it's not the warm and fuzzy book that you want to pick up and read, but it's a true life story. And it hopefully will bring comfort to many people. I've heard that from, a number of people. And every time it helps someone else, I say, thank you, Lord, that you helped me help someone else through the struggles that we went through. And so it makes me feel good all around.
Wow. You founded a group called the Encouragers. Can you tell us how it started and what impact it has had on you and others?
Oh dear. The Encouragers, they were a group of people who were widows and widowers in my church in Los Altos, California. And that's where I attended for 54 years. And I went, there was a gal that was my friend. Her husband had been 15 years paralyzed in a nursing home. He had MS and it was so bad. And he just kept hanging on. And so whenever Diane went anywhere, she was to see Dave in the hospital or in the facility. And she wouldn't talk to people. She wouldn't go around. And we were good friends at one point. So somebody else from church talked to her, sent her a note or called her, I'm not sure which, and told her that Dale had died. And she felt so bad. She hadn't seen us in a long time. And we didn't really live that far from each other. And so I was told, why don't you call her? And I thought, oh, she won't pick up, but she did. And she said, talked about Dave and about Dale and how, hard it was. And so I said to her, why don't we just get lunch? Can you meet me for lunch? And she did. And I was the first person in years that she had gone out to lunch with. And so that was a God thing. That wasn't a Kay thing. Kay just did what God put in front of her. And so we went out to lunch and I mentioned it to somebody in our group at church that I had gone to lunch with Diane. And this one woman said, well, why didn't I go? And she was a widow. And you don't like the widower term. It just makes you feel like, ugh, don't want to be there, don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But but she said, well, maybe I can go next time. And I thought, oh, well, maybe. So I called her and asked her if she wanted to go next time we were going. And first thing you know, we were a group. And by
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day, I want to say this was the second year. By
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day that year, we were going out for lunch to a Chinese restaurant that was not too far from my house. And a couple of the men in our group had lost their wives. And one of them said to me, well, what about us? What are we going to do? I thought, I don't know. I have no idea. And so I had to say, God, what am I supposed to do with that? And so I asked the ladies, and they said, they could meet us with us, I guess. We all knew each other, but it was a different makeup at this point. And so
Mm-hmm.
we, they came and they met us. There were, I think, five of them, and they brought the ladies those heart box candies,
Mm-hmm.
chocolates, and they brought each one brought one of the ladies a rose and
Mm.
long stem rose, and we had the best time. Well, what are we going to do now? I thought, I don't know.
That's
And so,
beautiful. But
yeah, it
what
just,
about
God just,
grief share? Is that the same as encouragers, the one in
no,
Roseville?
no, they're two different things. Griefshare.org is a national organization, and they put out the material and the DVDs. and I facilitate it with our ladies or men. I've had both in the encourager group and in my grief share group up here. And so they're two different things, but out of that group of widows and widowers in Los Altos, we kept adding people. And by the time I had moved in 2015, um, they we had 35.
Wow.
And that's a lot of people having lost something, but
Hmm.
they wanted to come. Can we get together for dinner? Can we get together for this or that? And some were still working, especially the guys. And so we ended up coming to my house and watching one of the grief series or something else. Like we watched David Jeremiah DVDs. We watched Max Lucado, and we had a couple others that we would watch. And um, they were just really intense. Then we would talk about what we saw, and how that helps us or didn't help us. And when we ate together, we would talk about where we were, what did we do this week, and how would that help somebody else in the group. So each step was to help somebody else besides ourselves. So
That's
that's,
great.
and they didn't want to be called widows and widowers. I neither. And so we ended up being batting a few names around and nothing stuck. And I finally said one time, how about encouragers? Because that's what we're doing. We're encouraging other people
Perfect name.
to get through their grief. Yeah.
Hmm. Uh, Through all the loss and healing, you've continued to offer wisdom and support to others. But where does that strength come from?
It only comes from the Lord. Because if I left it up to me, I wouldn't have anything. I would not be strong. When I was a kid in school, I was like the
Mhm.
wallflower.
Oh,
Last one on a team, all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be in the drill team. And the one that was the captain of the drill team said my legs were too fat. So that's always stuck with me. But it was just, I felt like I wasn't worth anything. But God showed me through this whole moving and loving somebody so dearly and then having lost them, showed me that I could help somebody else, but I could not do it in my own strength. It's all because the Lord helps me do it.
right. Your book says, or the book title is Finding Joy in the Midst of Grief. What does that joy look like for you today? And how did you discover it in your own life?
Well, I can tell you um, what the word joy means to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you just, when I see it, I think about it. My new husband buys me lots of things that say joy on them. I learned in my church in Los Altos that J is for Jesus first,
Mm-hmm.
O is for others second, and Y is for yourself last.
Oh,
If you put those in order, it makes all the difference in how you look at the day and how you respond to people, even when it's like gnarly stuff that makes you want to just pop somebody in the face. But it, go back and say, Jesus first, others second,
there's
stock in yourself
yourself.
last. And
I'll
you
be
can
back.
kind of put that annoyance down to the bottom because it's not helpful, it's hurtful. And so we need to crawl out of that every time. And I just feel I couldn't do that if I didn't really believe that in my life, Jesus is first, others are second, and myself is last.
Thank you so much. That's something new that I've learned talking to you today. Joy,
Good.
Jesus, others, and yourself. Thank you
So,
so
right.
much for that, Kay.
You're
Well,
welcome.
your book is just, it can help so many people. And I checked in Amazon. It seems like it's selling fast because I saw there was only one left. Our
Yeah.
listeners must be raring to get a piece. Is there any other website that they can visit to purchase your book aside from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your
Yes,
website, of
it's on
course?
Barnes and Nobles as well.
Yes, and
But I
your
don't see as much traffic on there as I do on Amazon
mm, and of
because
course your
Amazon is always, yeah.
okay, your website, they can also get it from there.
My grandson that's what he does. He builds all kinds of stuff in the computer world. And we didn't put it on that they could. buy them through me, but I'm beginning to think I want to do that. I've had the
Mm-hmm.
website for a while, and I think it's time to put them on there
You
because
should.
my other two books, could be on there as well.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I can get it at Bookwrights House
Yes,
that
yes, yes.
dash us
Great
dot
house.
com.
Yeah. And it was actually published originally through Zulon Press, and they
Mm-hmm.
are tied to Salem Authors Services.
Wow, that was a great talk with you, Kay. And as we close this heartfelt conversation, I want to thank you, Kay, for not just sharing your story, but for opening your heart to all of us. Your journey reminds us that grief does not have the final word, that through faith, love, and community, there is still joy to be found on the other side of sorrow.
Yeah.
Kay's
Yeah.
life, ladies and gentlemen, and work show us that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering with peace, about honoring what was while embracing what still can be. So,
Yeah.
any final words to those people who are grieving right now who are thinking about buying your book, and what can they expect from it?
Well, I hope it would lead them to a relationship with the Lord, if they are not already a believer in Christ. But I want them to understand that grief doesn't go away because you want it to. It goes away when it's time. Everything is done in its time. And some people take longer. There was a man whose daughter was in one of my grief classes, and his wife had died 5 years before, and all her stuff was left exactly as she had left it when she passed away. And that's a little long to stay in it. We have a saying in the grief class that it's okay to grieve. It is not okay to stay there. So you need to find a way out of the tunnel of grief, and don't expect it to happen in a year or in 6 months. And um, I had someone in one of my grief classes say, it's been 18 months and I just want it over. But it doesn't work that way. And you have to work it yourself. And the Lord can fill you with all the things you need. You don't need to turn to alcohol and drugs or any of that, or sex somewhere else, anywhere like that to fill the void. You need to fill it with what the Lord can teach you. And so, spend some time in a Bible. I use the NIV study Bible, and when I could read really well, then I, was in it all the time. Now my computer reads it to me. But you can always find a way to get connected to the Lord when you look through His Word in the Bible and whatever translation you have. And I would just say, don't jump too fast, don't jump too soon. Take it slow and easy, one step at a time.
Thank you so much, Kay. That was a whole lot of wisdom down there. To anyone listening who is walking through their own valley of loss, may Kay's words be a gentle light, guiding you one step at a time, as she said. And remember, even in the quietest moments, you are not alone. And I'll
Right.
see you next time, Kay,
All
for
right.
which other books are we going to talk about?
I think the next one is Oh No, Where Did He Go? It's a children's book. It's a true story. Again, it's tied to my husband's passing, and the story of the hermit crab and how my nephew used it at the graveside service. And it makes a huge difference. One of the gals in my latest grief class up here in Roseville said her daughter sleeps with that book all the time because she lost her grandpa and she's trying to figure out where he is. So it's got a lot of insight in it. And it's true. It's about my grandson, Jensen. His name was Jensen Thomas. And so we called him JT in the book. So it's about JT and oh no, where did he go?
That's very interesting. So I'll see you next time, Kay, and thank you
Okay.
so much.
Look
This has
forward to
been,
it.
yeah, I'll be looking forward to it. This has been Maria. Till next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and keep holding on to hope.